for more minutes. Okay, so thanks for joining and welcome to the OpenWhisk Stack Interchange meeting. I'm Neeraj Mangal and I will be hosting the meeting today. For the agenda, let's first start with the introduction to the new attendees. So if you have anyone new, if you want to, he or she want to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Yep, my name is Morgan Langlis, and this is my first time attending the call. I'm a software developer at IBM, and I've actually been working with Matt on a couple of pull requests, so I'm excited to contribute more to the project.
Thanks, Morgan, and welcome to the community.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to introduce, or we are like old folks? Okay. Okay. So let's start with a couple of notable updates from the pull request. So the first one is about adding activation ID to event messages. This is mostly related to the having activation ID into the event topic, so that external services can consume that activation ID if they want to, and make any references or make use of it. Next one is, this is already merged. Next one is related to the adjust pre-warm container dynamically.
Neeraj, just a quick question on that activation ID. There was a comment from Chain that might require some backward compatibility. Do you know if that's the case, or?
Yeah, I looked at that comment, and it seems like that activation ID is an extra field. So if there is anything or any external service which is consuming that event topic, then they can ignore it. Until unless they are not expecting that, then that can be ignored. So that's what I see as an explanation for the backward compatibility of this particular activation ID.
Thanks.
Next one is related to the adjusting T1 container dynamically. There were a couple of discussions before related to that particular topic. So mostly that is related to the how we can have some more resource, how we can avoid the waste of the resources, specifically the memory, by having pre-warm container, adjusting the number of pre-warm container dynamically. So in that PR, mostly it is related to the way if the pre-warm container is not used for some time, they should be deleted automatically by having some kind of TTL to the pre-warm container. And if a cold start happens, then invoker should be able to have a pre-warm container for that particular um, number, and then it should match the kind and memory for that particular given runtime. This is, I think, work in progress, and I see a lot of comments from Tyson related to that. I'm not sure it is ready to be merged, or still some work is needed in that. Okay. Next one is related to the parameter encryption support for namespace keys. That is actually an enhancement which extend another PR related to the having support of encrypting the parameter, default parameters, which Dan has raised. I think, Roderick, you have raised that
Yeah, actually,
PR.
yeah. So Dan did the first implementation. This PR should be semantic changing, semantic
Mhm.
preserving, but has the ability to have an encryption key per namespace.
Mhm.
And it would be nice if somebody from Adobe went through it, because I think you or Adobe is using this feature in production. So
Yeah.
just making sure that compatible.
Yeah, I will check with Dan as well about this. Next one is about allow option response on web action before checking for authentication. I think Roderick can light up more related to the an issue where related to the issue where if an option request comes in, then it fails because a pre-flight check was checking the authentication first and then checking the request type. So I think in this PR, if the request is of type options, then it will be taken care of instead of checking the authentication.
Right. So I
Yeah.
think so. Right. So I opened that when I sent an email to the dev list about it, and it's precisely what you said. If you have a pre-flight check on a web action, they'll all fail. So this is mostly a refactoring of the existing handler for a web action, so that the pre-flight handling, the options verb is handled before you actually check authentication, um, and it's semantic preserving in the sense that, well, it's not semantic preserving because it's fixing a bug. But in terms of actions which use the default CORS response, they see no change. They're only invoked after authentication has been verified. For
Mhm.
actions that want to serve their own options response, where previously they weren't getting invoked on the options verb, if they also requested authentication, now they would be. So there is a small change there. I think it's not a significant issue because actions which are usually doing that are using a header for authentication, which is coming from API gateway. And in the API gateway, it's the one usually handling the options response, which is why I think nobody's complained about this. So even though that's a semantic change, right, and an action that doesn't custom options response will now get invoked when they want to handle the options verb. I think it's actually not an issue in the grand scheme. So it's a small PR. The changes are mainly in tests, where I found actually some tests weren't. This case I was just describing using the X header for authentication wasn't actually being tested anyway per the tests. So the refactoring cleans up the tests, and I also put in this PR some cleanup of comments related to web action projections, which we removed, I think, sometime in December last year.
Yeah.
Thanks, Roderick. The next one is related to the supporting relabel of Prometheus metric tags based on the provided config. I raised this PR, and this is an interesting issue we recently hit in a Kubernetes deployment. So the issue is because of we in OpenWhisk we also have a namespace which is used for generating the metrics tags for a given action activation and all. And in our Kubernetes deployment, we are using Prometheus as a service, which is an external service provided to us, and we are trying to consume it. And there we see that they also add Kubernetes namespace label on the metrics which are being consumed by that particular in a particular namespace. So there was a conflict between OpenWhisk namespace and the Kubernetes namespace, and due to that, our metrics were not coming up properly. So uh, in this PR, I've added support for relabeling the metric tags. Right now, it is only for the Prometheus. So we can have a relabel configuration in the config, and based on that, whatever tags we define in there, all Prometheus before reporting those metrics, the K1 before reporting those metrics to the Prometheus, it will relabel those tags based on that configuration. So that way that is a customizable configuration, which is none by default. But if you want to relabel anything with the existing tags like namespace, memory, kind, or anything which we have currently, that can be done with this PR.
That's great. Actually, there was um, I was looking at this yesterday, and it would be nice to make some of the documentation around Prometheus and Grafana a bit more prominent. Sort of buried in the metrics folder. If you've got any documentation already, it'd be nice to see. Otherwise, we might, if somebody ever has time, it'd be nice to sort of put together a doc that describes how to deploy this. The documentation is kind of scattered, I guess, is my high-level comment.
Yeah, sure. I will do that. I think you're right. Means we need to have some documentation around user events and Prometheus and Grafana at one place where we can put it all together, right? Okay, I will take care of it in some subsequent PRs or something like that.
Thanks. That's awesome.
Next one is related to replace compose with quick start. So Rodrigo, again, you have sent some notification about it on the channel. So
yeah, this was just born out of actually some user question yesterday in the OpenWhisk Slack where he said, well, I just ran DevTools quick start. What do I do next? And I wasn't quite sure what they were talking about. So I thought, let me start up DevTools and see how to help them. And it took many minutes to just pull the Docker images that the quick start uses for compose. And then it never came up. I think there's some issue with the controller not coming up. Looking through the logs, I couldn't quite make sense of why it was failing. And so I pointed them towards the standalone OpenWhisk instead, and they seemed to go better for them. And I haven't heard back from them since, which I interpreted as hopefully good. So this reminded me that we should probably remove compose as our go-to start option, given that we have, I think, a much better quick start with the Java process. So that PR basically just makes that change in the README so that the initial experience is easier and hopefully more successful. I've never used DevTools myself, so it'd be nice to get comments from people who do use it. But I do use the standalone controller almost all the time now when I need to do anything with OpenWhisk.
yeah. Thanks, Roderick. And anything which I am missing related to the PRs on any other repos, I try to pull it from multiple repos, but couldn't find any significant change. Do you want to mention anything?
Not me.
Okay.
I think it's just worth mentioning for people who aren't watching it that Alex has been quite busy on the debugger repository. So there's been a number of PRs in the last week and a half, improving performance, adding functionality, fixing bugs, and things like that. So he's moving forward pretty quickly.
Cool. Okay. So next one is related to the releases. So we have released this OpenWhisk API Gateway 1.0.4. Thanks to Dev and everyone who voted. Yeah, so that's it for the call. Anything which you want to mention or want to
I have,
have?
yeah,
Mhm.
I have a question. So Morgan, you opened a pull request to improve the README on the OpenWhisk repo. I think removing a static image for more easily maintained table. Did you need additional help or guidance on that? I saw Dave gave you some answered some of your questions.
Yeah, actually, I had some answers on that, and then I went and worked on another pull request, and now I'm back to it. I was just pinging Matt earlier. Excuse me. I'm actually going to pick that back up later. I think I'll need his guidance, but right this second, no, I think I'm good.
Great. And thanks for your contribution.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. I like that table there. Okay, so moderator for the next call on 29th April.
Let's call. I can do it.
Thank you, Roderick. Okay. So thanks everyone. Have a nice day.